Welcome back, Bears fans, to another episode of the Chicago Audible, and welcome to Draft Week. We're now only 3 days away from the 2021 NFL Draft, and I can't wait. I'm your host, Will DeWitt. I'm joined by my partner, Nicholas Moriano, and the two of us, we're here, and I believe we are ready to unveil our final two mock drafts. And as a guy who has correctly mocked Roquan Smith and Jalen Johnson, I'm excited to see which one of my players I'm about to discuss that will be heading to Chicago here this week. But in all seriousness, Nick, how's it going? I saw you did another strong weekend of more great coverage of some local high school football.
Yeah, and fortunately it did end the football season, but I'm doing well. It's just staying busy. Grad school is now picking up, and also the NFL draft, like you said, is 3 days away. So I'm excited to finally put these mock drafts to bed with this last one and see what kind of happens starting Thursday.
We've done a lot of mocks. I know you've written a couple. We've done our first one post free agency. Then we did some simulations. Talked to Jacob Infante just about people all across in a bunch of different positions, up and down. So a lot of prospect talk here over the last, 4-ish weeks on the podcast. And like you, I'm excited to go through this exercise again, but I'm also excited to get some more concrete news, actual real players that we know are going to be here to discuss. So I'm very excited about that. I have a little bit of those raccoon eyes today. I was cutting grass in the sun. It hit like 85 degrees here in Bloomington, which is so nice to get out there and get a little bit of color going on. And I'm excited for the weather to turn, but I'm more excited to dive into these mock drafts here today. Is there anything that you want to preface your mock or just this show about?
I'm thinking about my mock. Not really. There wasn't like any certain patterns that I was trying to do. It just, again, wanted to be a little different from what I had mocked in my first two mock drafts. But yeah, it just kind of happened. I used a couple of mock draft simulators just to gauge where everyone's going. And honestly, nobody really knows where some of these players are going to fall. But yeah, there really isn't any, I don't want to say there's not consistency, but you guys will see in a few minutes here who I have pegged going to the Bears in each round here.
I also forgot to tell you too, actually, before we went live, I wanted to let you know, I met someone today out shopping this morning that played high school football with David Montgomery, which I thought was really cool. He saw my Bears card and kind of sparked up a conversation. He was like letting me know, like, oh yeah, I know, Montgomery David. I was like, yeah, I know David Montgomery, not personally, but yeah, I mentioned he played high school football with him. He played football at IU, and he graduated last year. He's still in town working on a degree, and I also knew my old neighbor, Vad Lee, so I thought that was pretty cool. A very small world, and I should have asked if you can get David on the pod, but I never thought about it until, honestly, just now.
Well, David Montgomery has our Chicago Audible business card that I gave to him at Bears Fit, and well, we're still waiting to hear you call David or send that email. So just check your wallet; it's definitely crumpled up in there, and you'll be like, "Oh yeah, that guy came up to me in the bathroom." Yeah, we'll see. Probably not. I'd look on the ground outside of Bears Fit. There's my name all crumbled up. It happens.
Tier, but in all seriousness, I'm very excited. Let's get into this show. Let's get our final 2021 mock drafts underway. And Nick, do you want to go first, or do you want me to kick things off?
I'll start it off here. Will we'll start with my
now
first
you
pick
remember
here.
you remember how you have to go through this, right? Like how you have to preface the pick, like the saying, and I'm going to play the chime, and you got all that down.
Yeah, you got it. I think
go.
We'll see. With the first pick, round one, pick 20, the Chicago Bears select. There you go. Greg Newsome out of Northwestern. This is a guy that when I saw he was, again, using the draft simulators that I was using, he just made so much sense for the Bears, just being obviously a local kid out of Chicago. But just when you dive in and watch the tape, Will, his change of direction and his ability to shadow receivers is elite. He is that kind of corner where if you have the number one receiver on the opposite end and he's on the opposite side of him, you feel comfortable with that because Greg Newsome is that type of guy. There were a couple of reps against Wisconsin where I have in my notes here where one of the receivers running a double move and Newsome's able to throttle down and he breaks on the initial move, but able to turn so fluently, just shadow the receiver, locate the ball, and then dislodge the football out of the receiver's hands the last second in the end zone. And you see that consistently out of a guy like Greg Newsome. So when I see that and knowing that the Bears do have Trufant, let's say Trufant does end up starting. You could still throw Greg Newsome at that nickel corner position for a little bit. And then once Trufant is done and over with his 1-year contract, he's automatically starting. You have 2 young stud starting cornerbacks on the outside. And look, in a division that has obviously Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, now Jared Goff, you need cornerbacks that can cover these receivers and make it difficult for quarterbacks. So Greg Newsome is my pick for the Bears in round 1.
Greg Newsome, I like it a lot. I had him considered for my pick. He was on the board. I did go in another direction. I'll get to that in a minute. When it comes to Newsome, were there any other players at the time during your simulation that you were considering that you did pass up on?
Yeah, so Tevin Jenkins was there at number 20, and I did have him in my first mock draft. And look, I kind of wanted to take him again because he's that type of player. But just to kind of change things up a little bit, I wanted to go cornerback this first round and then see how it kind of changed up my selections as the draft went on.
I like it a lot. Yeah, I know we didn't trade up again here in this mock. We did a few simulations, and I don't think it's worth our time to project that again just because we don't think that is, set in stone. Surely it's possible, but for this mock, we didn't want to trade up. So we are sitting here at pick number 20. So with my pick here at number 20, I'm going to piggyback off of Nick, though, from his previous mock, and I'm throwing in good old Tevin Jenkins. And I don't know what I can say about him that most of our listeners probably don't already know. He's a large and strong dude, perhaps the strongest offensive lineman in this year's class, both with his upper body and his legs. He brings that nasty. If you're in his way, he's going to impose his will on you, and he's going to run you over. He's pretty balanced in his pass pro sets, doesn't get caught lunging all too much. And he's also terrific with his hands. He can lock up defenders in a cinch. And once he does, it's, game over. He can control a defender with those bear claws, is what I'll call him here on the pod. Also, huge with his size. Remember, 6'6", 6'7"-ish, 320. And on top of that, with that size, that stature, and that strength, no second-level defender, even in the NFL, stands a chance when he reaches them. Here's a guy that starts day one. He makes that Bears offensive line better without any question. He's going to generate some push, move that line of scrimmage, and just seeing how much he improved each and every year in college leads me to believe that he's only going to continue to get a lot better there once he reaches the pros. He has all the strength, the power, and the temperament that you want, and just watch out when he gets to refine that technique just a little bit with some more coaching. I also believe, Nick, something that goes under the radar with Tevin Jenkins, because everyone's so enamored with all these intangibles and all these physical traits. I think something that's underestimated is his football IQ. He's a very smart football player. He plays with patience and poise, and he understands different fronts, different blitz packages, different stunts, and how to combat them. He never looks nervous or confused when those are really thrown at him. So with my pick, the Bears give themselves, I put in my notes, I'm going to read it out loud, a true ass kicker here in the first round. We got a dude, and, I'm thrilled. And I know you said you wanted to pick him again. You wanted to provide something different. This is something different for me because my previous first-round pick was Elijah Moore, and I'm still very satisfied with this pick as well.
Absolutely. He's one of my draft crushes for sure, Tevin Jenkins. And something that is also just when I was doing my research on him, he did there's like a video on him, and he reads a letter, and it's actually to his mother who he lost to breast cancer, years back. But he plays, and obviously with her in his mind. And that's, I think maybe that leads to, this nastiness that he presents on the football field. But whoever gets Tevin Jenkins, and if it is the Bears, they're getting a hell of a football player. And, that team is automatically better because of the football player, but the person they're also going to get.
Absolutely. Good stuff there, Nick. And I think we have a few moments before we're back on the clock for pick number 52. So in the meantime, I want to make sure that you know that today's show is brought to you by Mindful Health, LLC, featuring Danette May's top superfood product from her Earth Echo Foods line, Cacao Bliss. Nothing feels better than being able to enjoy rich, smooth, creamy chocolate and knowing you are doing something good for your body along the way. They start with 100% organic cacao beans that are naturally kissed by the sun, maintaining its miraculous health benefits. Then they blend it with turmeric, MCT oil, coconut, Himalayan sea salt, cinnamon, and black pepper for the perfect blend. And the result is a fall in love with a truly decadent, healthy, guilt-free chocolate, removing your cravings, facilitating weight loss, boosting your energy, and reducing your inflammation with one simple drink. And as you know, I got some of my hands on this earlier last week, and it tastes great. I mentioned I was going to make some pancakes over the weekend with it. I did. my 7-year-old, who's sometimes a little picky, maybe not with pancakes, but he loved them. So they're very, this product is very versatile, and it comes with a recipe book as well. That way you can use it for something that maybe sparks your imagination, like pudding, so many things, drinks, food, you name it. So you can get up to 15% off by using our promo code MINUTE15. And to do so, just please visit earthechofoods.com/MinuteMedia. And again, that promo code is MINUTE15. All right, you're listening to the Chicago Audible. I'm your host, Will DeWitt, joined by my co-host, Nicholas Moriano. And we're here giving you our final Chicago Bears mock drafts of 2021. We're now entering the second round, pick number 52. And Nick, since I had my pick, the ad read, you're going to go first again, and then we'll switch up the order. So here we go.
Yeah, with the 52nd pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Bears select Samuel COSMI, tackle out of Texas. Now, maybe people in the chat are thinking, well, Samuel COSMI's not going to be there. He very well might not be there at 52, but this is a guy that if he is, there's no brainer that the Bears should select him, because along with what TEVIN Jenkins brings, that nastiness, you see that from Samuel COSMI in the run game. I think he is elite in terms of driving people back, creating rushing lanes, and just burying people into the turf. I have here, he's just a strong physical run blocker who displays a good anchor, drives opposing defensive linemen back, and has the ability to recover even if an opposing edge rusher gets him on an initial step. Where he does have some trouble, and we might as well highlight some of these things that these, later round picks are going to have, is that against lengthier edge rushers, he was going up against KELVIN, who was, I think a top 10 pick last year, one of the best edge rushers in the last class. Taller, was able to get a nice just initial first step off the edge. And when Samuel COSMI, being as big as he is, stands straight up at times, and KELVIN stood him up, drove him back, and had Sam Ehlinger, the quarterback there, kind of running for his life at times. But then you also saw some reps where he's able to recover and block a very skilled pass rusher in a KELVIN. So yes, there's going to be some times where he may struggle against those really freaky athletic pass rushers, which they're more common now in the NFL than they're going to be in college football. But the power that he plays with, especially in the run game, and when you have the top 5 rusher in the NFL, David Montgomery, I think it's just a good fit for what the Bears should be doing moving forward. So Samuel COSMI, if he's there at pick 52, the Bears haven't addressed tackle, that's a guy that I'm looking for the Bears to go get.
Do you project him as a right tackle, a left tackle? I'm not too familiar with his exact draft profile. And then my second question is where are you getting that extra E sound in? Because it's COSMI, right? So that'd be COSMI?
Yeah, and maybe it is that's how you pronounce it. But I heard like the last video they were pronouncing it the way I was saying it. So
okay.
maybe
I'm just curious.
But it might be COSMI. But he does play majority at left tackle. But just with how the Bears are constructed and seeing what maybe he could potentially do, maybe you could shift him down the line. But he did play majority at the left tackle position. So That's something that I think Juan Castillo, this Bears coaching staff, will see, because if maybe that right tackle position, which has a little bit more openness in terms of who could be playing, maybe that's where you can pit, my 52 overall pick there.
Okay. See, that's my one reservation about TEVIN Jenkins in the first, is drafting a right tackle in the first round. And I know Jenkins played a little bit of left tackle. He played a little bit of guard. I know he primarily projects right tackle. So that's why I was wondering if your tackle here in the second round does project in more of that valuable position of left tackle, which it seems like he does. So that's where my question was kind of coming from.
Gotcha. And yeah, I think you're actually right on the pronunciation of the last name, COSMI. I don't know what. Maybe it's the Mortal Kombat that I was watching.
You do not want it to be COSMI, because it sounds too much like Karimi. And the last, which reminds me, of course, of the What's that go there?
COSMI.
There you go.
Speaking into the microphone there.
Yeah, that's why I was like, ooh, I don't like already being reminded of a first round bust at tackle with your guy. So I'm glad that we're able to kind of straighten that one out. All right, so here for me, pick number 52. I am going with DYAMI Brown, the wide receiver out of North Carolina. During my simulation, he was the best player available, and it just made so much sense for me to snag him here at pick number 52. I know all the talk has been that the Bears need to get someone who can play in the slot, and even though that may be true, I want to remind folks that the Bears don't just play one guy in the slot. Under Nagy, they rotate guys inside and out rather frequently, especially Allen Robinson. He has over 100 snaps in the slot over his past 2 seasons. So what I like about Brown here is that he's a threat that can also be a lineup outside when Allen Robinson slides in, and that's why this makes a lot of sense to me. Brown, of course, playing inside and out. He's a little slim, 6'1", 185, but he doesn't play like it. Really good route runner. He needs to prove he can handle a larger route tree at the next level. It was a little limited there at North Carolina. Like our quarterback that we drafted in 2017, a little bit of a limited offense. But I do believe he possesses the skill set in order to grow his route tree just a bit. I love watching him through his progression. He does a really good job of varying his speed, using double moves to gain separation. And when he does that, he often leaves guys in the dust. And Brown, he's coming off back-to-back seasons with over 1,000 yards and 20 yards per catch. Very good on vertical routes. He's known for being a dynamic, deep threat. He's pretty fast with a 4.46 640, though he's not a true blazer. But again, what I love about Brown is he can project to be a number 2 in an offense. Unlike Elijah Moore in my first mock draft, who's primarily a slot guy, Brown's a little bit more versatile. And I think that would really allow Matt Nagy and this offense to really just spice things up a bit between Darnell Mooney, Brown, and Allen Robinson. That would be a fun trio for me to watch and see how they can kind of utilize them as chess pieces against different fronts and coverages that they would be seeing. So for me, DYAMI Brown, wide receiver, North Carolina.
Yeah, it's a guy, I watched a lot of film on him as well, Will, and the double moves that you mentioned, when he's running those DBs are sometimes falling, but then the separation, so it's that second burst, you see it consistently with DYAMI Brown, and I think that's something that the Bears obviously will take, another deep field threat.
Deep field threat that can also do some damage underneath. And again, bringing in more speed to that offense has been one of my focuses this offseason. Hopefully it is Ryan Pace's as well. But Nick, ready to jump in round 3?
Let's do it.
All right, this one's me. So with the 83rd overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select PAULSON ADEBO, the cornerback out of Stanford. And yes, my previous pick here was Kellen Mond. He was off the board. I took a chance, didn't draft him in the second round. Kyle Trask was there. I want to mention that, but I decided, I passed on that. So here I choose a corner that has a really awesome and intriguing blend of size and length. He's at 6'1", had himself a big-time 2018 season where he had 17 passes defended and 4 interceptions in just 13 games. He plays the high point better than most anybody in this draft class thanks to those long arms. He can really get them right into the catch point. I thought, Nick, you were making a catch point for me. Good timing when you're grabbing your headphones. He can get those hands right into the catch point and disrupt that attempted catch. And he has loose hips that allow him to change the direction and stick with his man. And I just love his style of play at the position, too. He's very physical in his coverage. He does a decent job of getting receivers off their mark and disrupts their routes and the timing with the quarterback. Also good at utilizing the sideline as leverage. He's not afraid to get involved against the run. He has that aggressive mentality that extends beyond just his coverage, and he will not shy away from smacking a running back in a hole. And when I look at ADEBO, one thing that on top of that aggressiveness that stands out, it also can get him in trouble at times, right? He can be a tad bit grabby, but that's something that can be worked on. That can be coached. And I just love that he's just ball hungry as they come. That's something that you want in that secondary with every player that you line up back there. He also has a very strong football IQ, something that has me very excited. Last year had me excited about Jalen Johnson when I mocked him to the Bears. And I see some similarities there with the work ethic, the football smarts, and his ability to read quarterbacks' eyes, bait quarterbacks into throws, and utilize his length to his advantage. And he also has good speed where if a receiver gets a step or two on him, he can close on that. And with that length, that's just a little extra bonus for him to make sure he can fully recover. And like you, Nick, with your first round pick, mine here, maybe you can play him in the slot the first year and then move him outside. I do see him eventually being a outside starting corner And pairing him with Jalen Johnson, just like Newsome, would be a very fun duo to watch here in Chicago for some time. And I'll end on a fun fact. Paulson's native language is French, because his mom's native language was French. So he's a bilingual football player. And I don't know how much you know about being bilingual, Nick. I know you know a little bit, but I know people who are bilingual tend to have a higher IQ in general because of how that mind's work and able to absorb two different languages. So just something I wanted to throw out here as well. But that is my 83rd pick.
Yeah, and someone that I'm not as familiar with, so I'll definitely have to go do some homework just in case the Bears draft him before maybe Friday's draft day there. But I'm going to go with my 83rd pick. The Bears are going to select Tylan Wallace, wide receiver out of Oklahoma State. Hey, that's all right there. A little preview before we talk about him here. But this is a guy that is just ultra productive there at Oklahoma State. And look, they like to throw the football a lot. Tevin Jenkins would know that, seeing Tylan Wallace scoring all the touchdowns that he did while he was there back in 2018. So a couple years back, 1,491 yards there, Will, in his final season, 66 first down catches, led all Power 5 conference receivers. It's a guy that with all the production that he's had, only 3 drops in the last 2 seasons, 178 targets, 3 drops. And despite the size, and it's not like he's a small guy, he's 5'11", 187. He plays really physical with the football. He lowers that shoulder, runs through guys. All you guys have to do, if you don't know anything about Tylan Wallace, just do Tylan Wallace versus Iowa State. What will come up is he's going to be on the left side of the play. It's a trips to the left. He's the Z receiver. He's in the slot, and he runs a little bubble screen. And somehow he turns this bubble screen into a 50-plus yard touchdown, running over 2 people and then just delivering one of the nastiest stiff arms I've ever seen. And I'm so glad it happened against Iowa State, too, out of all teams, just me being a Hawkeye, of course. But that's what you see out of Tylan Wallace consistently, just this physical presence, whether the ball's up in the air where it's I wouldn't even call it a 50-50 with Tylan. Like, he's not the biggest guy, but it's like more of a 60-40 his favor. He's going to bring that down and make the catch for whoever the quarterback is. And you just see a lot of deep touchdown receptions. And I got to watch him at the Senior Bowl. And this is a guy just so savvy with his route running. It doesn't matter who's the DB in coverage. He's going to create space and make it easy for quarterbacks to throw into. That's what he could provide. He was mostly lined up on the right side as a receiver, but he's a guy that at the Senior Bowl was also playing in the slot. And I think would maybe be even more productive if he played there, just because he can have a little bit more space. He doesn't have the best speed or even the best height. So move him inside, give him more space to work with where he can really just use that route running ability to create that space. But like we're trying to find guys that the Bears can obviously utilize in the slot. Tylan, like your guy earlier, Will, is like somebody that you can put all around the offense. So Brown can go everywhere. Wallace can go everywhere. Just creates more options for Matt Nagy and what he wants to do. That's what I think Tylan Wallace can bring to his Bears offense.
I like that a lot. I also like that after 3 rounds, we've drafted the same positions, just in different order. But it looks like our priorities are pretty much aligned.
Yeah, and the quarterback is not one of the priorities this time around in this mock draft.
No, it's not. Not in this one. At least not yet. Who knows what you or maybe I have up my sleeves here later. So after pick, 83, we have a while to go here until we're on the clock again, Nick. So how about this? I did call Seattle earlier, and I was talking to the GM, and he wasn't really interested in, well, I was trying to get Russ again, and that just wasn't really going to be the case. And it's one of those things where, what's that? We got a phone call going on.
Is that the Seahawks?
That's Snyder, Seahawks GM here on the line.
We're gonna pick that up?
Yeah, I was trying to pick it up. It just took a while. So I know you can't listen to my conversation, but he's willing to give us pick number 129. Here, let me show up all the details here. So we'd have to give up pick 164 and 204, but we can move up about 30 spots here to get another pick in the top 130. I say go for it.
I'm all for it. The Seattle Seahawks have, I think, 3 picks.
They do.
This entire
and that's why
draft.
He was calling.
They need people. So
I
all
tried
for
again
it.
for Russ too. That didn't work, but they're like, we need draft picks, and we have a lot to give up here in the back half of this draft. So that makes a lot of sense here on both sides. So let's go ahead. Pick number 129, Nick. You want to go ahead and kick that one off here, post-trade?
Yeah, with the 129th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select Kelvin Joseph Jr., cornerback out of Kentucky. And maybe this is another one, you guys, where you're like, how is Kelvin Joseph lasting all the way to pick 129? Well, he was there in one mock draft simulator. And I think where this this can be realistic, and what is maybe not characteristic of the Bears, he's got some character issues. He a guy that had to sit out of the bowl game when he was at LSU, was suspended for the bowl game in 2018, and kind of has these immaturity and accountability issues. And that's in Dane Brugler's The Beast, if you read that. And he's also really focused on his rapping career. Has 6 albums under the name, ready for the name? YKDV Boss Man Fat. And the reason why his name's Fat, and I was listening to him in an interview, he was actually like 10 pounds as a baby. So his mom and his family would just call him Fat all the time. And it just kind of stuck. And then once he got, a little bit older, he just put Boss Man in front of it. But he's really committed to that and would like to pursue that later. But let's get to the football side, where
there's no doubt side.
There's a football side where there's no way he's going to last until this pick, if that's what teams are, looking at, because this is a guy that can shadow receivers with the best of them. Like when I was watching Greg Newsome, like elite. Kelvin Joseph has some of those tendencies. They're just not as consistent, but there's a really good rep against Devonta Smith, obviously the Heisman Trophy winner. He gets an interception, just covering him downfield, stay with him, turn, not allowing Devonta Smith, one of the fastest guys in the draft, to separate, locates the football. I think this is a guy that if he's there, and the NFL community, the GMs are looking like, oh, these character issues. Oh, he only started in 9 games in his entire career in 2020, and didn't start when he was at LSU, and he does drop. Well, maybe you take a chance on a guy like this. And I know the Bears usually don't like to go for these type of guys, but when your job's on the line and you need to win, you take risks. And I think Kelvin Joseph, if he were to fall this far down and the Bears are moving up, this is someone you take. And look, he did start on outside corner. I already had the Bears taking Greg Newsome. You figure it out. You let those guys kind of work it out and see where you project them at, because you can get 2 ball hawks just out there alongside Jalen Johnson, and then a revamped Eddie Jackson. Who's passing on the Bears secondary? And you're hoping that, with a revamped pass rush, things will look, pretty darn good there. So Kelvin Joseph, maybe he's not there, but maybe the character issues and some of the things that he deals with off the field can push him down and allow the Bears to select what I think is a first to second round talent on the football field, but the other things might push him down. And I think this would just be a phenomenal pick if he's available this far down in the draft.
Very interesting. I'm still caught up on the rap career side. Again, it's awesome to be versatile and multifaceted and have different streams of talent. That's pretty awesome. Just like I said, it's a little uncharacteristic here for the Bears, but interesting though. 2 corners, so quick. But like you said, it's not a bad problem to have too many good, any position in the NFL. So no complaints on my end. Moving to my pick here at 129, I'm gonna go with an edge player, Dayo Odeyingbo. I think I did okay, and I think my light just died. It's back. All right. The lights just went out on that pick, which I don't know if that's a good sign or not. He's the edge guy out of Vanderbilt. For me, one of the better players on the board at the time, and I know edge rusher is not the largest need on this defense this offseason, but we're all aware that with Robert Quinn, barring a miracle, he's going to need to be replaced sooner rather than later. We invested a 5th rounder in Trevis Gibson last year, so why not add more youth again this year? And I was using a simulation. I gauged who would be available, looking at where we were around this pick. And in reality, if the Bears do trade up, they're going to have a guy in mind, and maybe this would be one of those players. And with this pick, I'm betting on some trades. I saw Dayo with a 3rd round grade. He was on the board. This makes sense. Really good potential, very strong athleticism. He's very versatile. He lined up at DE. He lined up at 3-tech. He also lined up at nose. But in the NFL, he's going to either be a defensive end or a stand-up outside linebacker in a 3-4. And I think that versatility could lead to maybe some creativity there for Sean Desai now running this defense and how to best use him. Of course, he's a guy, as an edge rusher, you hope he can get to the quarterback in a hurry. He's very twitchy. He does need to continue to work on refining his skill set and his approach to his different pass rush sets in general, but he's not overly polished, which is why he's not taking in the first 2 days. But luckily, the Bears have enough talent. I'm using that term loosely when it comes to Robert Quinn, but he shouldn't be forced or rushed into action, which is good because he did tear his Achilles before the Senior Bowl. So this pick, for me, it's all about patience. When you watch his film, his speed off the snap is a huge plus. He really puts him in an advantageous position constantly. He has good bend off the edge, and he's another player with every single one of my defenders so far. He plays with physicality. He compares to Preston Smith, and some scouts say he looks a lot like Chandler Jones when he was coming out. I wouldn't mind if either of those comparisons panned out. When looking at Quinn, if this pick hits, plus the potential of Gibson, and don't forget Jeremiah Atachu, who we picked up in free agency, this outside linebacking core may be pretty scary for some time to come. So for me, I went with edge, and I'm going to live or die by it, and I feel pretty good about it right now.
Yeah, I almost forgot who, the Bears getting the outside linebacker from Denver, but that would be a nice, well-rounded outside linebacking core. Will, I like the pick.
Again, it may not even be a 2021 contributor, but with that Achilles, you have to see how those medicals turn out. But if you can look forward to the future and you're looking past Robert Quinn, I think that one would make a lot of sense to put a little. It's like investing. You put a little bit away now to have a little bit more down the road. All right, well, Nick, up next, we have a few 6th-round picks left to round up this mock draft. But first, I think we have at least one shout-out, and we can let people know if they want some shout-outs during our draft episodes, how to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'll first start off saying a quick message from our friend Mason West. Mason at Team Rehabilitation in Barrington, Illinois, is bringing a whole new meaning to the phrase athletic assessment. Starting soon, they will have a Dorsa V, a medical-grade wearable technology that provides world-class treatment for athletes, which is easy to use and provides immediate feedback, identifies risk movement patterns, indicates likelihood of lower limb injury, and guides performance improvement. There are 3 modules: AMI, Athletic Movement Index, Running Assessment, and Knee Assessment. The AMI is a powerful screening tool for athletes, which helps you assess core and lower limb function, providing a range of objective measures. This technology is being used by collegiate and professional teams for their players, and now you have access. Mention the Chicago Audible when you call to schedule and get 50% off your assessment. Contact Mason at 224-512-7200. Find him on Instagram, dr.masonwest_sportspt, to begin your journey to be the best athlete you can be. And remember, mention the Chicago Audible. Get that 50% off. Try out this technology that college and professionals are using. You won't regret it.
Awesome. Do you want to let people know how to get a shout out if they want on? Again, we have a lot of content coming this week, so I think now's a great time. We haven't really talked about shout outs too much lately, but I think it's a perfect time to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to do it through Venmo or PayPal, we have those options for you. Just on Venmo, you can look up at the Chicago Audible. Should see my name, the Chicago Audible logo. And then on PayPal, chicagoaudible.com/PayPal is what you can make the donation out to. And yeah, put a name, put your friend in there that you want to give a shout out. Tell them you have to watch the next episode. There's going to be something there for you. That's always a cool way to kind of get involved and join our, awesome community that we have here in the chat, and all the Bears listeners that, obviously tune in each and every week. And there's, like Will was saying, there's going to be so much content. There's going to be so much going on, all these new players. So make sure you're with us each round that the Bears are on the clock. We will be live talking about it. So it'll be a great opportunity to get some shout outs during that time, but you can find it again, Venmo at the Chicago Audible, and then on PayPal, chicagoaudible.com/PayPal.
There you go. I did see a super chat come in from the Ghost of Judah tribe earlier here in the show. So I just want to say thank you for that donation, that super chat, whatever we want to call it. I saw it come through here, and I just want to say thanks so much. I see you in the chat all the time. I appreciate you being a consistent contributor to it, and as well as tuning into our show. So thank you so much. But Nick, I'm excited. 3 6th-round picks left for us. Are you ready, as I am, to kind of dive in and round off this mock draft?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. With the 208th overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, I have the Chicago Bears selecting Jamie Newman, the quarterback out of Wake Forest / Georgia, question mark. We'll figure that one out. So, again, we decided to do this mock draft without trading up in the first round, which I think makes a lot of sense. And we missed out, or at least I missed out on Mond in the third. Didn't take him in the second with the other talent on the board then. Saw Jamie Newman still hanging around here in round 6 for me, and I decided, you know what? I'm going to pull the trigger. I'm going to roll the dice here. If Newman played last season, who knows what his draft stock would have been. He could have been considered more highly than he is right now compared to his peers. But after transferring to Georgia, he did opt out last season, so we don't have any film to look at from last year. But going back to his starting season at Wake Forest, he was ultra productive, nearly 3,000 yards passing with 26 touchdowns. Plus, he ran for another 575 yards and 6 more scores. Newman, he's a very thick-built quarterback, a really good athlete with a ton of agility. He doesn't go down easy, both in the pocket and when he's rushing. And as a thrower, he has pretty good arm strength. He knows how to use his touch and velocity to throw guys open. He's not the most accurate of quarterbacks in his draft class, of course. We're here in the 6th round, and he needs to protect the ball better, and he also needs to work on his feet a little bit more in the pocket as well. When you look at Newman and you dig a little bit deeper, you find out he's known to be a great leader on the field as well as off the field. He's someone that thrives in late game situations where he remains as calm as ever. The word that just kept coming up was poise, and I just love hearing that this guy has ice in his veins. He's also renowned for being one of the hardest workers in the program. So if I'm taking a guy this late, I want him to be a hard worker because he's going to have to work hard on his craft if he wants to play in the NFL. So I don't mind taking a shot at a quarterback that has good size, arm strength, who's a dual threat, and plays with that poise. And here's also something, Nick, that was a little bit funny over the last few days when I was prepping for this show. I saw someone in our chat on YouTube, or I think it was a comment on our previous video, and he called him a poor man's Donovan McNabb. And that was interesting because when I recall Dak Prescott had that very similar kind of comparison when he was coming out. So I looked up Dak Prescott's profile coming out, and I pulled it up to Jamie Newman's. Man, are they so similar. Both are applauded for their big frame, their ability to be a rusher. Both profiles mentioned the need to work on the same kind of things, pocket presence, ball placement. And then you know how NFL.com, I don't use them as much as I maybe did in years past, but how they have like the scores for all the players. Those are also very identical. Dak Prescott had a 5.9, Jamie Newman 5.8. So if the Bears take Jamie Newman here in the 6th round and we get a Prescott-esque quarterback, talk about a huge win there for Ryan Pace. So for me, how the board fell, how we went forward with this mock draft, the quarterback earlier did not make sense, but when I saw Jamie Newman, I had to pull the trigger. Will he be a franchise quarterback? Who knows? The chances are against him. But if I had been on anybody at this stage of the draft, I think Jamie Newman will be one of those that would heavily have favor for. So that's going to be mine. So yes, Nick, I was the first one, maybe the only one to go quarterback here.
We'll see about that. With my 208th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, I have the Bears selecting Nick Niemann, linebacker out of Iowa.
From Iowa? I mean, that's two things.
So you had Jake Newman, Nick Niemann, like, I don't know. I'm like, wait, I saw the name. I'm like, oh, you're going pretty similar to me here. But look, Nick Niemann, I think, is just an athletic linebacker that I think could have something here. When you look at, I don't know if people know about the Twitter account Math Bomb, which releases the relative athletic scores. He gave Niemann a 9.51 RAS score out of a possible 10. That, at the time, when he put out that score, was ranked 104 out of 2,011 linebackers from 1987 to 2021. At that time it was released, that was the highest relative athletic score for this linebacker class. And you see it when he's playing. I think this is a guy that is agile, smart, just has a really good feel for the game. And at 6'3", 234, for someone that can move that fast, that fluently can identify rush lanes, the Bears are kind of still looking for, I think, linebacker depth. I know they just signed Christian Jones to, provide that depth behind Roquan Smith, Danny Trevathan, but I still think they can add somebody else there. Does Nick NIEMANN play a little high sometimes when he's, going up and trying to fill the lanes? Yeah, he does. He does do that. There's some tendencies like that, but I think his upside to drop down into zone lanes and just get into the way of over the middle coverage, you like to see that from Nick NIEMANN. He's like the physicality that he also plays with. And again, just having those athletic traits, that's what you're looking at. Like with Jamie Newman, you're looking for these athletic traits that can become something. And we're in the 6th round, people. It's not like the Bears are going to hit on each one of these guys here. So we're looking at what's the upside? What can he become? And Nick NIEMANN is a guy that I project he would immediately contribute on special teams. And if he's good enough, can work his way up. He does have a brother, Ben, who does play in the Kansas City Chiefs. His dad was a coach for a long time. So football is ingrained in him. And it could be if he gets selected by the Chicago Bears here.
There you go. Linebacker. I kept looking at ways to get a linebacker in this draft, so maybe I'm spoiling. I don't have one coming up. It is a need. I went edge earlier instead, but I'm glad that you did it. But again, another Nick from Iowa. You couldn't have drawn up any better.
That's actually what I said, Will. So you were thinking exactly the same way as me.
All right, here we go. I'll go ahead and I'll kick off this second to last pick for us here. With the 221st overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, I have the Chicago Bears selecting SHAKUR Brown, the cornerback out of Michigan State. My previous pick here, by the way, was Diamador Lenore, the cornerback out of Oregon. So I'm sticking with the same position here. And I don't know why he fell all the way to 221 in my simulation, but he did. And that was an easy, done, simple decision on my part. This is a name that we talked about a bit when we did our simulation mocks just a couple of weeks ago. He's a guy that had a big breakout season last year in the Big Ten where he had 5 interceptions. What hurts, though, with him is his lack of sample size, only 12 starts in college, but still, you love that ball production, 15 PBUs and 6 interceptions in his 12 starts. He knows what to do with the ball in his hands, too. He had 2 interception returns that went for 50+, including 1 touchdown. And what I like best here is that he does project as a nickel corner. I already got someone who can play outside earlier in my draft. And we all know nickel corner is a position of need. He excels, Brown does, in man coverage, and he's able to play up near the line of scrimmage and press better than most. He has the speed to stay with his man. He also has good closing quickness as well, and he's very good at tackling in the open field. He's aggressive. He has a few hits that are going to grab your attention. He's able to and willing to work through blocks, and he's always looking for the ball. And for me, when I'm going with Brown here, again, you're probably getting a special teamer as a rookie. Maybe you can throw him into the mix with the Duke Shelley, maybe the Kendall Vildor, whatever the Bears are planning to do with that nickel corner spot. Heck, since I drafted a corner earlier in this draft too, maybe he competes with him just a little bit. But like you, Nick, who double dipped at corner, you went a little quicker than me. But I do feel like this is a position that, given the Bears, they keep trying to find guys to stick in the draft. And outside of Jalen Johnson, I think they're having a hard time of finding one. So I think Brown here for me, trying to go with another corner, makes a lot of sense. And hopefully he can stick around. So that's where I'm at here with pick 221. What do you got?
Yeah, so I'm actually double dipping again, and maybe this is the pattern that we were talking about, Will. So with the 221st pick in 2021 NFL Draft, I had the Bears selecting Frank Darby, wide receiver out of Arizona State. So this is a guy that I got a chance to watch him at the Senior Bowl, and the first thing that kind of stood out, didn't know really much about Frank Darby. There's just a lot of energy, a lot of passion that he's playing. You hear him, regardless if he actually made the play or not, you're gonna know where Frank Darby's at. He's a guy that likes to dance, likes to celebrate when he makes big plays, and he was accustomed to doing that at Arizona State. 19.9 yards per reception, 8 touchdowns, with 616 yards off 31 receptions in 2019. The thing with Frank Darby, he's not, I would say, elite at really as a route runner, with speed. He ran a 4.59 at his pro day. He's about 6 foot, 200 pounds. So he's got decent size, decent speed, decent hands, decent route running, just not elite at really anything but his ball tracking skills. If you throw the ball up, there's a good chance Frank Darby is going to go ahead and locate it. He did have 11 drops compared to just 58 catches the past 3 seasons. So you don't really like that ratio, but I think he can work on the route running to be more of a technician, like a Tylan Wallace that I had the Bears taking earlier in the draft. But you just kind of like what he brings at that position, just having that high energy kind of guy. Like I was thinking, and I don't know if this is a good comparison, but we always talk about Anthony Miller and the passion he kind of plays with. Frank Darby, I feel like his energy is kind of, in a way, it's like exciting. He's happy. He's dancing. Like where Anthony Miller's, I don't know if it's just anger or what really it is, but Frank Darby, a lower, obviously at pick 221, maybe he can become a solid guy. Also would have to contribute on special teams, and you want to see what he can potentially do at the next level, where if you can line him up in multiple positions. He was primarily on the outside, but a guy that is going to take some work. And I think that's going to be a commonality for whoever you select at this point in the draft.
No doubts about it. We've done this long enough to know that one. So another receiver there for Nick. So 2 receivers, 2 corners. Interesting. Let's move into our final pick, 228. Nick, let's go ahead and I'll give it over to you.
Yeah, with the 228th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Bears select Sam Ehlinger, quarterback out of Texas. There's the quarterback that everyone was waiting for. Not really. But look, Sam Ehlinger is a guy that, had a lot of production there at Texas. He definitely isn't the most consistent. A lot of his deep passes I was just watching, in the games that I was watching Samuel COSMI, what you see from Ehlinger is that he'll leave the deep ball inside, where it's, able to get intercepted by cornerbacks. So it's not that consistent in that aspect. And I think Sam Ehlinger, he does show what I like to see out of the quarterback position, just toughness. There's a lot of times where you're seeing Sam Ehlinger where the pocket is collapsing. There really isn't a play to be made, but somehow he squeezes out, will try to run for a first down and try to find that target over the middle. And he was consistent in some of the games that I watched of him. But look, this is more so the Bears. Hey, I don't know if they could just say, hey, we checked off the box. We drafted a quarterback. You can't be mad at us. But look, I think at this point, what are you going to draft a lineman that's not going to be anything? Why not at least draft a quarterback? It's pick 228 for Pete's sake. So this is a guy that maybe his career ends up being like another Texas quarterback, and a Colt McCoy, who we talked about in the last podcast, Will, for just a little bit, and just is a journeyman, a backup. And I'm not expecting much, but I just looked at the board. I'm like, I'm not going to go get an offensive line. I'm not going to triple dip at a wide receiver, a cornerback. Sam Ehlinger. And again, there's another guy I got to actually see at the Senior Bowl. And, it was a lot of good, a lot of bad, a lot like how he played at Texas, just inconsistent at times, had some big plays here and there, but he is a quarterback. And I don't know how people would perceive that. I don't know how people would perceive, like with even Jamie Newman, Will, I wonder, would Bears fans just be pissed? Like, yes. Okay, so this is what they get pissed when the Bears don't select the quarterback, right? But when they do, it's like, that's a waste of a pick. So it's like this happy medium that they're trying to solve, but the Bears can never satisfy everybody. So last pick, 228, Sam Ehlinger out of Texas.
The problem is if they wait to this stage to get quarterback, given the current situation, yeah, it falls flat. I'd be a little irritated. I'm sure you would be too. Last year, though, different story. They could have went with a guy. I know James Morgan was one that I was excited about. I don't know if you're still
Jake
excited
Fromm
about.
Was a guy. Yeah, I know. At the time.
So, yeah, it's just like with mine with Newman. It's not exciting. I wanted to at least get one if we were going to do this mock draft, and that's kind of how it worked out. But with Ehlinger, though, one thing about him that I really like when I was looking into him is his leadership. He is a really good leader. I know a lot of people in that locker room looked up to him. So I think whenever you are going for that position, that is something that is important as well. So I just wanted to add that. But let's go ahead and wrap up this mock draft with my final pick here at 228. I have the Bears selecting Jalen Darden, wide receiver out of North Texas. So yeah, Nick, I'm also going to double dip at wide receiver just like you did. So Darden, he left North Texas as the school's all-time leader in receptions with 230. All-time leader in receiving yards with 2,782. All-time leader in receiving touchdowns with 38. And if drafted, he would be the first player drafted at North Texas since 2004, which is crazy to think about. So here's a player, just like my other receiver, who has that extra gear. He's another 4.46 kind of guy. And that deep speed is something that he can use to his benefit. Helps create some of those looks underneath, and he's known, Jalen is, for being extremely determined and the hardest worker. I love when I see those in draft profiles. It makes me so happy. Again, that character to me is something that's very important for some of these lower round guys. Now, the issue, he's a little undersized and thin, 5'7", 174, but he is very difficult to bring down. The word that I saw in a lot of profiles, slippery, which makes a lot of sense when you put on the film. He also has return experience. We know we're looking for one of those right now. I would draft him right here at 228 with just a clear understanding that as a rookie, he's just going to be my kick returner. Maybe if we're not feeling good about Tariq Cohen's knee, he can also return punts, no problem. But then he also has the speed, which I think Matt Nagy would want to throw on offense sometimes. I mean, you have so much speed. If you had Cohen, Darden out there, the guy got earlier in Brown, Mooney, like, how are you going to cover all that speed if you can stretch a defense vertically and you do some of those horizontal, those long crossers? You should be able to find some easy throwing lanes for whoever's playing quarterback for the Bears here as well. But over time, perhaps he can develop into a larger role on offense. He does primarily line up in the slot. That's where he projects. So unlike my pick earlier that can play both inside and out, Darden, not that he's a one-trick pony, but primarily he will be someone that will line up inside. Maybe someone that if you line up on the outside, you're trying to do some really quick screens, get guys in front of him, and see what he can do there after the catch. So earlier as well, Brown, he replaces Anthony Miller. This is more of like a Wims Ridley replacement on the roster on the depth chart and provides something a little bit more than they do. Ridley doesn't even get to suit up half the games. At least this guy can return kicks. So I think his value would be shown at least right away in that regard. So that's going to do it for my mock draft. And Nick, if I was keeping score the way I think was accurate, I think we did the same exact draft besides I went edge and you went linebacker.
Yep, that looks about right. So I was thinking very similarly here, Will. And actually, so it's so funny that you bring up Darden because this is the third time today that I've seen his name. And I had never looked at, like I had seen his name earlier. So yeah, two other people I saw on Twitter and then you. I'm like, okay. And also the Bears did bring in his quarterback from a year ago, Mason Fine from North Texas. So I'm like, oh, North Texas, Mason Fine. And, you know, he put up some really big numbers. I bet Darden was, you know, the recipient of some of those passes from Mason Fine there. But, yeah, it's just so, I don't know, full circle for this long day I've had where I've seen him since the morning, and now he ends the day.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. I told you I put in my picks yesterday morning. So just how that all kind of came full circle for you. That is pretty interesting to say the least. So now that we've gone through the exercise one final time, is there anything that you like or dislike that you wanted to share with me or share with us?
Yeah, so I knew you would ask this question. Well, look, when I look back at Frank Darby and just what he's just very even keel on everything. It's not, and like I said, like I was saying earlier, it's not anything's really elite except his ball tracking skills. I wish he would have taken a flyer like a Darden, someone that has that speed that at least, hey, he's got that in, you know, as his go-to thing, and maybe it can develop over time. That would be the thing that maybe I'd go back and try to see what I could do there. Maybe even draft someone that's just a little bit faster and is as even well-rounded and everywhere else, but at least he has a speed. That's something that I would go back and check out. But what about yourself?
It's a really good question. I like my mock draft pretty well.
It's a perfect draft.
You know, I feel like I usually do a pretty good job on these, but I don't know. I feel like edge still for a trade up may not make a lot of sense. Again, I was using the board, seeing it was there, and I didn't like some of the talent. Like it didn't make sense to maybe even trade up in that spot because it just didn't. The value didn't align for me. But so that's why I played the patience game with my guy with that torn Achilles and not an immediate need, but I'm trying to look into the future just a little bit. I did look at linebacker, and they were more like 4-3 Sam kind of guys, and not someone that you would want to throw in as like a Danny Trevathan type of replacement just yet. So maybe if I want to nitpick, that would be the one, but it's hard to pass up on Jenkins round 1. Brown is a very intriguing option round 2, and that corner ADEBO in round 3 also I think could be a potential day 1 starter if Trufant doesn't live up to, I'm not going to say any hype, but maybe his namesake, just a little bit here in Chicago. Other than that, I'm curious, Nick, you mentioned a really good point earlier when you're talking about your quarterback, Sam Ehlinger. Like, would Bears fans be happy or would they be pissed? And I think we both know the answer. No one would be happy. But I want us to kind of try to separate fan brain and analytical brain, or the analysis brain, a bit. Looking at your draft and look at what we've done in simulations and just how it would go, do you hope they draft a quarterback early on? Like, if you have a chance for Fields, maybe that makes the most sense. But outside of that, and maybe Mon falls, but I have a hard time, unless you trade down from pick 52, I have a hard time taking a quarterback at 52, just looking at how the board shakes out.
Yeah, I think the problem too, Will, when I look at, let's say the Bears don't move up. They can't get a Russell Wilson, and they can't move up to get one of the top 5 guys. Then you get someone in round 2, round 3. The big thing for me is that you're going to have to be comfortable with this coaching staff building up that guy. And so that's where, for me, there's this inner conflict. Like, I think right when the Bears brought back Ryan Pace, Matt Nagy, we're like, one of these guys shouldn't be here, because I think just the development on the roster hasn't been continuous since both these guys have gotten here. So if you're drafting one of these more not day 1 ready quarterbacks, you have to trust in those guys to develop them. And I don't think I have the trust in this current coaching staff to do that. So that's why I think 2 out of my 3 mock drafts, I didn't have the Bears selecting a quarterback, because I just said, they're going to do best player available. And if they do that, they're going to build around the team, and maybe the next coaching staff will get a chance to get a quarterback. So I think if it's not day 1, I'm more, I guess I would be okay if they just went best player available at other skilled positions rather than quarterback.
To me, if one of that second tiers falls to pick 83 or in that realm, I can stomach it. I just cannot stomach one of those guys like a Mills, a Trask, or a Mond at 52. That one to me you're really leaving so much talent on the table. And I know they said everything's on the table, but I don't think that's what they meant by everything is on the table. But yeah, I'm very much in the same boat as you. Any other takeaways here? I feel like the bottom half of the draft, I guess my last takeaway just from all the homework I've done, is the bottom half. So you're looking at round 5, 6, 7. I know we don't have a 7th round pick as it currently stands, but like round 5 and 6 especially, I think has a lot of decent secondary and wide receiver depth there, that if you wanted to pick up, like we just double dip, both of us did, I think there are a lot of options for the Bears. If they did want to double dip at any of those skill positions, that 6th round, they should be able to find a player that I think has a good chance of making this team and being a contributor down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and just one last thing. I don't think the Bears, I think there has to be moves made before this draft happens on Thursday. You look at, Field Yates had a tweet about the money that the Bears currently have. The Bears are dead last with money to spend. They have $410,000. Well, dead last in the league. You can't sign all your draft picks with that amount of money. So I'm wondering what the Bears, in terms of moves, are going to do to just open up some space. I think there has to be stuff done. You can't sign what you're planning on getting in terms of the draft, some of these players. So definitely have to watch for that. I think Ryan Pace is actually going to talk tomorrow to the media, if I'm not mistaken. So, again, I doubt anything substantive is going to come out of that, but that's something that I would be interested in, just seeing what moves are potentially made before this draft actually starts to happen here on Thursday. But it's going to be interesting there. I was going to ask you one last question. Well, at pick 20, what's the one move that, if the Bears come out with this player at pick 20, it's like we're quitting the podcast, we're wrapping things up, just done with the Bears. I saw here, I'll go with mine. Somebody mocked. I was trying to find it. I thought I tweeted something about it, but somebody had Davis Mills mocked to the Bears at number 20, and I was like, Okay, you just put me in a bad mood. you just put me in a bad mood, dude. Whoever you are, you just trolling? Like, what is this? So that I'll just come out and say, like, doing that, even if that's like if you go quarterback that's not in the top 5 at 20, I'm not showing up to the podcast. Like,
you're gonna log out of the screen. Like,
yeah,
oh, well, good luck.
But yeah, that's one that just really ticked me off. I think that's just a clear overreach, and you're just trying to, get somebody. But is there anybody that falls for you, or even a position that you think if it's at pick 20?
The only QB I'm taking at 20 that can, I'm not even gonna say realistically, but the only one that I think people speculate could fall would be Mac Jones. And okay, at that point, I wouldn't be mad. But I told you I wouldn't be happy with any quarterback at 52 who would probably be there. So yeah, I wouldn't feel good about them at 20 either. The wide receiver out of Florida, though, Tony, I see getting mocked to the Bears a lot at 20, and I feel like 20 is a little too early for him. If I'm going wide receiver round 1 out of the realistic options, it would be Bateman out of Minnesota, who was unfortunately taken 1 pick before my simulation. I'm okay with Jenkins, though. But if I'm going for a receiver in round 1, I think the only one that realistically the Bears have a shot at and that I would take would be Bateman out of Minnesota.
That's a good – yeah, I'm glad you brought up Tony, because I think it was the NFL Network had a, full mock draft, and Kay Adams – who should definitely come on the podcast at some point, had Kadarius Toney as the pick. I was like, oh, and I was doing just like late night work. It was around midnight. Like, no. And then, turned off the TV and started doing what I was doing. But yeah, Kadarius Toney, I agree with you. Not at 20. There was a trade back scenario, maybe, but he's just like a gadget player. But I completely agree with you on that one.
Other than that, my last question for you is, are you ready for Thursday? I got myself an orange Zoa that I'm saving for Thursday night. So I know you've been talking it up to me privately for the past couple of weeks, and I found one. It's in my fridge, and it's waiting for Thursday night.
Is it the sugar-free one, or is it the original?
Probably the original.
Okay, good. I like those better. I don't care about the calories and the sugar that's in there. It's going to do its job then. So, but I am ready. I actually will have a TV now in front. Usually I don't have a TV in front of me to kind of go and watch the picks live, but there's a TV there. You got the screens right here. I'm prepared. I'm so ready to be done with mock draft. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, I'm done with this. Like we're done with mocking all these people that, just scenario, but it's a good learning experience. Oh yeah, here we go. Will, I got to put my hand here. You ready for this? Ready for this draft?
Yeah, I'm ready for this draft. See, green screens are fun. I can't wait to see what we can do with some green screens down the road. We're just getting started. We're just trying to haphazardly put a background behind us, and there goes my hand all green and whatnot. But no, I'm very ready for Thursday. These are my favorite. I would almost say these are my favorite episodes. It's a slog though. Thursday night, Friday night. I'm happy though that we have a first round pick because we've always stayed on the ready in case the Bears traded into the first round over the past couple of seasons. Of course, it hasn't happened, but those are late nights, just waiting, you and me in a green room. Are we going to have to go live or not, even though we don't think we will? And, of course, my favorite memory is when we did draft David Montgomery. That's still one of my favorite draft podcast memories of all time.
Yeah, that was a good one. One, because that was my guy, but two, because of the circumstances of when that pick happened, where I was at the time.
See, I feel good about this. I'm good at choosing some defenders on this team. I got Roquan right. I got Jalen Johnson right. You got David Montgomery right. Like, we don't do a bad job here when we're going through this exercise. So I hope, I hope one of us gets at least hits on one over this weekend at one point or the other. But I think that's going to do it for this episode. I'm just going to give you one last chance before I sign off.
No, that's it. We're done. Pre-draft stuff is over with. No more mock drafts. The real thing is happening on Thursday. And I'm really looking forward to everyone being in the chat, being ready, seeing what they're going to do. Like, this is an exciting time. Well, like, I agree with you. The draft episodes are awesome. Our reactions and just the analysis that goes into seeing whoever the Bears are going to select. Usually it disappoints us, but we'll see what ends up happening day one on Thursday.
So you're telling me you would not be happy with me if I woke up tomorrow and said, let's do one more mock draft episode. You want to do it?
I'm just not responding.
Yep, fair. Well, is that different than any other text I ever send you? Kidding.
I'm just not, I got to get better at that. It's just not, yeah. Remember, my phone was also glitching too, which
it was
I don't
double
think really.
text. Yeah, you make up for it all the double texts that come back
Yep,
my way.
exactly.
You and your 5G. That's not. But all right, I'm gonna call off this episode here. I hope you found this mock draft, mine, maybe Nick's, to be both fun and informative. As we mentioned, we can't wait for Thursday night, just like you. And now's a good time to remind you, if you haven't yet, to join the 7,000 Bears fans who subscribe to our YouTube channel. We will be going live every single time the Chicago Bears are on the clock, all weekend long. Yeah, that means we could have, well, at least some of these 6th-round picks kind of are close to one another. But yeah, it's going to be a long Saturday, to say the least. But these are my favorite shows of the year. Nick and I will be sharing our live thoughts before the pick. And of course, we're going to react and analyze every single pick the Chicago Bears make. So Nick, rest up. I know you had a busy day today, but rest up, rest that throat, get the voice, back into game shape, because, I'm going to need it. You're going to need it as well. So we'll be back Thursday night. Will we be going live with a top 10 pick? What about top 15? Top 5? Pick 20? Perhaps later? Who the hell knows? But we're going to find out here soon. So we'll see you whenever the Bears are on the clock. But until then, bear down, Chicago.